All right, so ninjas, right? Everyone thinks they know about ninjas.
Yeah.
What we're talking about today is not just like, fictional characters. We're going to pull back the curtain on some serious history and strategy here.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at the operatives, the espionage, the subversion.
Yeah, forget those like leaping from rooftop images.
Right.
We are going deep on the source that really tries to get to what was really going on. Ashida Kim's Secrets of the Ninja.
Exactly. This book, which came out originally back in 1981,
Yeah.
and then this edition's from 2000, it's a training manual. But I think for anyone out there, the learner who's looking to understand, sort of the world of the ninja, historically, philosophically, this is a really interesting place to start. It caused a huge stir because, it was a forbidden topic. Kim was trying to lay out in very clear terms, here is how to train to be a ninja, and people were not happy about that.
Yeah, well, forbidden knowledge always has that effect, doesn't it?
It does.
So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack the core of what Kim presents in Secrets of the Ninja, look at those philosophies and techniques. And a really striking connection that he makes right at the start is this idea that Japanese ninjutsu is rooted in Sensei's The Art of War. Not just, fighting skills, but we're talking about espionage and subversion.
Absolutely.
This stuff predates Christ.
Yeah. And I think that is the fascinating thing for you. If you are a kind of person that is fascinated by strategy,
Right.
Kim really starts by establishing this very practical foundation. He quotes Sensei directly. And he really emphasizes these indirect methods, weakening your enemy from within, even using unsavory characters, creating conflict within the enemy's ranks. And then, of course, above all else, intelligence gathering.
Yeah.
Which sort of reframes the whole ninja thing from just a fighter to a real intelligence operative.
Right. And he doesn't just stop with Sensei. The book even points to Machiavelli's The Prince, the famous book about power and politics.
Right.
And there are similar ideas there about the cost of open warfare. So it's really interesting that right at the start, you see this focus on methods other than direct combat.
Well, and I think that's something that you can connect to the bigger picture here. This idea of espionage and subversion, this is not unique to one culture or time. This is a recurring theme throughout history.
All right. So where did it all begin? What is the core philosophy here?
Right.
Kim says that the origins of ninjutsu are a little bit shrouded in mystery, unsurprisingly.
Sure.
There's Chinese influence, like we were just talking about with the spying methods.
Right.
But he points to 6th century Japan as the origin of the term shinobi itself.
Yeah, so the book talks about this war between Prince Shitoku and Moriya, and a warrior named Otomo no Sajin was so effective at gathering intel for Prince Shitoku that he was awarded the title shinobi, which means basically stealer in.
Stealer in?
Yeah.
Wow.
And the interesting thing, which Kim notes, is that the ideogram for shinobi actually forms the basis of the character for ninjutsu.
Oh, wow. So it's like baked right in.
Yeah.
So what do these early ninjas actually do?
Well, the initial roles, as he lays them out, are really about information gathering and sabotage. He has these classifications. He has indigenous agents, sleeper agents, doubled or turned agents, and expendable agents. And in this last category, he mentions the kunoichi, who were the female ninja.
Yeah.
And they would undertake missions of assassination, sabotage, espionage.
Really?
Yeah. So it paints a picture of a very structured, very secret network.
Yeah. So now, for anyone out there, for you, the learner, if you were expecting some magical explanation here,
Right.
Kim is very clear. Ninjutsu is not magic. It is not about having, supernatural powers.
Right.
He describes it as an art of invisibility, practical skills, and a philosophy. He uses a really interesting analogy. If a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? If an attack is not perceived, it essentially hasn't happened.
Right.
And he says that to walk the, quote, silent way, you have to be 4 things. First, you have to be a hunter, understanding your prey, right?
Right.
Second, you have to be a warrior, taking responsibility, strategic thinking.
Yep.
Then a wizard.
A wizard.
Maintaining secrecy, stopping the world.
Right.
That's the concept of muge mume no jitsu, right?
Right.
No name, no art,
Yeah.
mastering beyond specific techniques, and then finally being strong, knowledgeable, daring, and silent.
Yeah, and it's really interesting when you think about that.
Yeah.
It really raises the question for you about the mindset, the discipline. It's not just about the physical, it's about the mental as well.
Yeah. So let's get into something a little bit more concrete. the ninja uniform.
Okay.
Kim calls it the shinobi shokozu. And he makes this really fascinating connection to kabuki theater, the stage handlers.
Yeah, I think that is really fascinating, too.
Yeah.
For you, if you're thinking about, how do you not be noticed?
Right.
These stage handlers were deliberately meant to be overlooked even when they were right there in plain sight. And Kim suggests that ninjas apply this same principle to their environment.
Yeah, he's saying blend in.
Blend in, yeah.
So Kim lays out sort of a modern interpretation in the book of the ninja uniform: black ski mask,
Right.
reversible black overjacket, black belt or sash, black coveralls with blousing ties, and black tagi socks.
Right. And each one of those has a very specific function.
Yeah.
I mean, the black ski mask, obviously, you pull that down, instant facial concealment.
Yeah.
The reversible jacket, that helps you to quickly alter your appearance if you need to. And the soft-soled tabi, that allows you to move silently.
Yeah.
And even the blousing ties.
Right.
Kim points out that they weren't just for looks.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
They could actually be tightened to slightly restrict blood flow, which can actually help to mitigate the impact of a blow, or even be used as a tourniquet if necessary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we always think of ninjas wearing black, right? That kabuki connection.
Right.
But Kim actually says solid black can stand out at night.
Yeah. It's not very practical.
Yeah.
A lot of ninja schools favored brown, gray, or even red.
God.
Yeah. This one's interesting for you. Red appears black in low light, but it regains its color in firelight.
Oh, wow.
And he thinks this might have had a psychological impact on enemies.
Yeah.
That blood and danger association.
Yeah.
And he actually references the Spartans
Oh, really?
using red capes, yeah, for that same reason. So that's both practical and a form of psychological warfare.
Wow. It's fascinating how much detail and planning went into this, and that leads us perfectly to the principles of light and shadow,
All right.
what Kim calls Kagashi no Jutsu.
Yeah, and this is really where that whole art of invisibility comes into focus for you. Kim really gets into the science of shadows.
Okay.
He talks about the umbra, which is the darkest part, and the penumbra, which is that lighter fringe.
Okay.
You have to remain in the deepest shadow of the umbra.
Right.
That's the most effective concealment. And he has this rule of Kagashi no Jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
Human eye perceives movement first, then shape or silhouette, and then color last.
Right, so use that against them.
Yeah. And then he also gets into dark adaptation. Your eyes need about 30 minutes to fully adjust to low light conditions.
Yeah.
And then he has these techniques of off-center vision and strategic scanning.
Off-center vision.
Yeah. In low light, you focus your gaze slightly away from a point, and that actually allows the image to fall on the rod cells in your peripheral vision, which are more light sensitive.
Ah, okay, so you're actually seeing better.
Yeah, you can detect shapes,
Yeah.
movement better, and then scanning, it's short, irregular eye movements, brief pauses. This prevents those rod cells from getting overwhelmed. So you maintain that sensitivity.
Interesting. So what are some of the actual, practical things he suggests?
Okay, well, for one thing, if you have a light source, like a fire at night,
Yeah.
you always want to position that between yourself and the enemy.
Okay.
So they're looking from light into darkness.
Right.
It's harder to see.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In daylight,
Mm-hmm.
he suggests keeping the light source, like a window or a door, on your right. Same with an exit.
Okay.
And, he has all sorts of other tips. When you're moving through shadows, select your path carefully. Be patient.
Right.
Control your breathing. Adjust your posture, even to match the shapes around you. He actually says the corner behind a door is the best hiding spot in a room.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
So this all makes sense, right? It's very, very practical stuff.
absolutely.
But now we're going to shift gears a little bit to the internal discipline of the ninja,
Right.
the emphasis on meditation.
Right, because we're not just talking about the physical, the
Right.
spiritual and mental aspects are just as important.
Yeah, I mean, I see that in a lot of martial arts.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Mental clarity.
Yeah.
Think rationally, retain information. This is essential. And he describes how the ancient ninja had all sorts of exercises to heighten their perception, to build psychological insight, to rejuvenate the body, calm the mind, and ultimately cultivate inner strength.
Yeah. It's almost like this, it's almost legendary, right? This idea of ninjas having this preternatural sense for detecting enemies.
Yeah, or even, predicting moments of death.
Yeah. But is that real or is that just, myth?
Well, Kim is very clear. It's not psychic powers. It's incredibly refined skills
Mm-hmm.
of observation, intuition, honed through training.
Okay.
And there's this really important distinction that he draws for you between outer strength, which is physical, and inner strength, which is developed through practice.
Okay.
And this is where he introduces ki,
Key, yeah.
life force,
Right.
which can be cultivated, but he admits very few truly understand it.
Right.
And then we get into Kuji Kiri, the nine cuts, which Kim describes as the key to the mind gate. This is how you actually experience inner energy.
Yeah.
And he says that the purpose of enlightenment, any path, is to show the student his true face.
Wow. Okay. So what are some of these practices?
Okay, well, he connects Kuji Kiri to Shigendo, which was this ancient practice of mountain asceticism in feudal Japan.
Right.
And the number 9 is really important in that tradition. And he goes into detail about all sorts of breathing exercises and mudras, which are these specific hand gestures. And he starts with the full lotus position.
Yeah, the full lotus. I've heard of that.
Yeah, and it has all sorts of symbolism about calming the mind. He says it's like stilling the pool of the subconscious, and there's a very specific way of sitting, breathing techniques, where your tongue goes, even how many times you click your teeth together. And then there's this exercise, beating the heavenly drum, where you interlock your fingers behind your head, apply gentle pressure, you tap your fingers on your skull, all while drawing ki down to the hara, the body's energy center.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay. So where does the hara or tanteen fit into all of this?
Well, he describes it as the golden stove of ninja alchemy. It's where you boil away the li of the ordinary personality.
Okay.
And then he has this exercise called opening the heavenly pillar, which is like this chiropractic turning of the upper body. And this prepares you for deeper Kuji Kiri practices. And then he gets into breath and heart rate and qigong. There are 3 ways to alter your breath. Hypoventilation, you feel heat. Hyperventilation, you feel cold. Balanced breathing, you feel calm.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, and then there's these 3 centers of power in the body: sacral pump, heart pump, and cranial pump. And each one is linked to specific mudras.
The mudras are the finger knitting, right?
Yeah. They help you remember things, and they help you draw power.
Right. Right.
And Kim describes Kuji Kiri as this series of these hypnotic hand movements. You visualize specific kanji, which are Japanese characters for positive attributes, and you direct energy. And he even suggests you can use them as like these magic insigns to boost your confidence or influence someone else.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, so can you break down some of these kanji and mudras for us?
Sure. Well, the first 3 are CHU, which is strength, SAN, which is concentration,
Okay.
and KAI, which is harmony.
Okay.
And for each of these, he gives you specific instructions about hand positions, movements, how long to hold your breath, what to visualize, and the benefits. For example, CHU is supposed to improve your kinesthetic sense, which is your sense of body movement. And then he mentions the other 6: TAI, SHA, HYO, RINTR, and SHA, for things like healing, premonition, harmony with the universe, mastery of time and space, control of the elements, and enlightenment. But he says the last 2, those are really advanced, passed down verbally.
Right, right. So it's like a secret teaching.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're back to the practical world with INPO, the art of hiding. What are the different ways a ninja conceals themselves?
So Kim lays out 5 methods. There's the earth method,
Okay.
Uzuragakure, which is hiding in small ground-level spaces like a quail in the brush.
Okay.
Then there's the water method,
Right.
Kitsunagakure, hiding in water.
Okay.
The fire method, where you erase your sound and shadow by moving behind light.
Okay.
The air method, Tanukigakure, hiding in high places.
Yeah, that's right.
And the wood method, blending in with trees and vegetation.
Right.
And actually, he even mentions modern guys like Alan Kuhn and Jack Murphy using the air method.
Oh, wow. So it's still relevant today. Absolutely. So Kim makes this distinction, right, between strategic concealment,
Right.
which is like long-term hiding,
Yeah.
and tactical penetration, which is, being unseen while moving toward the target.
Right. And he really stresses the importance of intelligence gathering before you even think about infiltrating.
Right. Know your enemy.
Know your enemy, exactly. Know their numbers, their location, their logistics.
Yeah.
And he says that ninjas have this unique advantage.
Mhm.
They could actually go and assess a mission firsthand
Yeah.
through observation.
Okay.
And selecting the right spot to observe from is crucial.
Yeah.
He says you want maximum cover and concealment,
Right.
clear line of sight to your objective,
Yep.
and you always want to keep your back protected.
Right.
And then he has this Kuji Kiri meditation technique for observation,
Wow.
the Tansai method, sighing breath. You visualize these Chinese ideograms,
Yes.
and he says, observe for at least an hour.
Really?
Yeah. And control your breathing so you're not detected. You can even listen to your own heartbeat to stay calm.
Wow. That's intense.
And then he gives you 9 times when the enemy is most vulnerable.
Okay. Like what?
Well, like the night before they expect an attack.
Okay.
The moment of victory, when they're overconfident,
Mm-hmm.
when a new commander arrives,
Okay.
during a change of guard,
Right?
when their supplies are low,
Mm-hmm.
when they're drunk or exhausted,
Okay.
during bad weather,
Right.
when they're celebrating a religious festival,
Okay.
or when they least expect it.
Wow, that's a pretty comprehensive list.
Yeah.
So what about those barriers and sentries? How do you get past them?
Okay, well, this is where we get into Kyuji Eisai, the 9 steps.
Okay.
This is how you stealthily penetrate an enemy encampment.
Right.
It's got roots in 13th, 16th century Japan, but the symbolism goes back even further. He talks about the Pole Star School, 6000 BC.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's ancient.
And tribal methods of invisibility,
Yeah.
walking through smoke.
Mm.
And he even mentions this 3rd century AD guy, Ko Hung, who was all about stillness.
Okay.
Sit as still as a lizard. That was his thing.
That's good advice.
Yeah, he was big on bribing guards to get into a castle.
Okay.
But ultimately, all these ancient teachings were about longevity,
Right.
immortality.
Yeah.
And Kim says that invisibility is achieved through stillness, but also stealthy movement.
Right. So it's a balance.
It's a balance. That's Kujiashi. He reminds us again, man sees movement, silhouette, and color.
Right.
So you got to move silently, and you got to have a calm mind.
Right.
And he has this little aside about black art magicians.
Okay.
Black absorbs all light,
Right.
casts no shadow on itself.
Okay.
So let's go through the 9 steps.
Okay. Yeah.
So the first one is shinobi oroki, the silent walk.
Okay.
You're low to the ground. You're gliding loose ankles like Tai Chi Chuan.
Right.
Your arms are like antenna,
Yeah.
sensing the environment. Kim compares it to kabuki actors.
Right.
They make it look effortless.
Right.
And if the ground is noisy, you can roll up your obi, your sash, and walk on that.
Ah, smart. Okay. What's next?
Next is hengpu, the cross step.
Okay.
This is for narrow passages,
Right.
smaller silhouette.
Yeah.
You make tracks that look like you're going both ways. You keep your back to the wall, sort of like a fencer, but exaggerated.
Okay.
And you practice this both forward and backward.
Right.
And your eyes, they're focused about 3 yards ahead,
Mm-hmm.
and you avoid direct eye contact with the enemy.
Okay.
Because if you look away,
Yeah.
their pupils dilate.
Right.
And then you can use your off-center vision.
Oh, sneaky.
Yeah. Okay, the 3rd step is haipu, the crawling step.
Okay.
This is low to the ground, total darkness. It protects your body.
Mm-hmm.
You move slowly, silently.
Right.
You're ready to attack instantly.
Okay.
And again, you're shifting your weight, gliding,
Right.
keeping your knees together.
Okay.
Then there's shipud, the serpent step.
Okay.
You're flat, palms down, elbows closed, legs spread, toes out. You lift your head to observe.
Right.
And you move by extending your arms,
Mm-hmm.
pulling yourself forward with your left leg and toes. Then you alternate legs.
Okay.
You weave back and forth.
Okay.
Disguise your trail. It's kind of like the South African leopard crawl.
Mhm.
And every time you move, you stop, you
Mhm.
listen, you observe.
Right. Right. Okay. What's next?
Next is lungpu, the dragon step.
Okay.
This is similar to the serpent step, but faster.
Okay.
It's for when you have some cover, but visibility is bad.
Yeah.
You're off the ground,
Okay.
forearms and lower legs,
Right.
knees low. You alternate knee and elbow. It's a bit more vulnerable.
Right.
It's for that initial ingress,
Right.
when you're just beyond their reach, but still in view. He compares it to the military high crawl.
Okay.
And the key is to avoid bobbing your butt.
Yeah. I can see that.
Okay. Then there's Zenpu,
Okay.
the leaping step, but
Mm.
you don't have a lot of detail on that one. Then there's Jumenpu,
Human
or the entering pivot.
Okay.
Short retreat, heel first, no weight shift.
Mm-hmm.
It's the basis for Tanpo's Iluo Naikua.
Oh.
And it's good for turning corners.
Very right.
You approach a barrier, you lean, you peek.
Mm-hmm.
You draw your head back, you take a quick step around the corner
Okay.
into a wide horse stance.
Yeah.
You glide your back foot, like an Aikido,
Okay.
when you do an entering pivot,
Right.
like a wrist lock.
Okay.
Okay, then there's Pianpu, the side step.
Okay.
Similar to Hengpu, but slower.
Right.
It's for narrow spaces, like doorways.
Right.
You keep your shoulder to the wall,
Mm-hmm.
peek around the door,
Okay.
but look at the base of the enemy's skull.
Okay.
Then you hop sideways across the opening,
Right.
glance back, and then you move outside of their light circle
Okay.
at night.
Right.
Finally, there's Milupu,
Milupu.
the lost track pivot.
Okay.
2 90-degree side steps, facing the opposite direction.
Okay.
This is from the lost track form.
Right.
And it's used for darting behind cover or behind the enemy.
Okay.
You start in a horse stance,
Yeah.
and there's this 2-person exercise.
Okay.
You tap their shoulder, they shift their weight, they pivot.
Right.
You step past them,
Right.
and you apply a sleeper hold.
Okay.
It's kind of like a spinning back pivot
Okay.
or a box step.
Right.
And you practice it both right and left.
Okay.
And this is really the primary exercise for ninja invisibility.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah. And then he's got all these other Kujiashi applications, like climbing stairs, you do a hengpu near the wall,
Okay.
mirrors, you treat them like open windows, cross outside your reflection,
Right.
and always be aware of your shadow.
Yeah. Okay. So you don't want to be silhouetted.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've mastered the 9 steps.
Right.
Now, what about other obstacles like fences, walls?
Well, Kim talks about the obstacle course.
Right. It's classic training.
Right.
The key is confidence.
Right.
For barbed wire, you can climb over, cut through, or burrow under.
Okay.
Climbing, you use the support poles, you grip the wire between the barbs, you do a controlled drop and a forward roll.
Okay.
Cutting, you make a vertical slit and roll under.
Right.
Burrowing, you dig like a dog.
Right.
But he does warn about electrified fences.
Right. Yeah. So be
And his motto is over, under, around, or through.
I like that. Okay, so what about walls? Can a ninja climb walls?
Well, there's this concept of Ching Pai Kung, which is wall climbing ability.
Okay.
And he says you can make your body feel lighter by concentrating energy in your solar plexus.
Okay.
And you use the theory of opposition, opposite arm and leg.
Okay.
You can practice on drain pipes and trellises, but he says test the strength first.
Yeah. Of course.
And then he describes this ancient elbow and heel method.
Wow.
You spend 3 years crawling on the floor,
Okay.
3 years on a brick wall. Yeah.
And 3 years on a smooth wall.
Wow, that's 9 years of training.
Yeah, vertical, horizontal, diagonal movement.
Wow.
And he says you can use ornamental ledges and windowsills.
Really?
Yeah, even a 1-inch lip is enough
Wow.
if you have the right technique and finger strength.
Okay.
So for wall climbing, you press your body against the wall.
Okay.
You select your route, grip the ledge, you push and pull for momentum, only one contact point at a time.
Right.
Shift your hands,
Okay.
advance your legs. When you get to the top, you lie flat, you listen,
Okay.
and you avoid being silhouetted.
Right. Okay, so what about tools? Did ninjas use tools for climbing?
Well, Kim talks about being practical, using what you have.
Right.
He starts with the Nin J2, the Sword of Darkness.
Okay.
It was shorter than a samurai blade.
Right.
Good for thrusting.
Right.
And he talks about the tsuba, the handguard, and the scabbard, and how they had all these practical uses.
Really?
Yeah. And he even assigned symbolic meanings to different parts of the blade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the tsuba on the Ninjutsu was often larger and more square.
Okay.
Yeah.
Expert speaker.